All right, so, you know, it's really special when you meet someone who is so alive, like fireball, energy, highly creative, very intelligent, very compassionate, deep feeling. I'm describing Katie Wallack. We met, I think, 2 or 3 years, maybe it was 2 years ago at the Writer's Block. I'm a writer and an author, and so we got into this conversation about writing, and it's been a real joy to work with Katie. I'm going to read a little bit of her bio here. Katie Wallack is an educator, writer, and performer. During her career as a professional performer in TV and film, she volunteered to represent Los Angeles' commercial actors in contract negotiations alongside Screen Actors Guild, SAG-AFTRA, labor attorneys, and successfully negotiated their union contracts. She now works as a senior contract educator for SAG-AFTRA and is writing a book about Shackleton with the ultimate goal of producing a TV series about the explorer. I'm so excited about Katie's work. There's a little snippet here about her talk today. What if the parts of your story you've written off as detours, pivots, or failures are actually where your real gifts have been hiding?
Yes.
And what might you find if you finally read the margins of your own life? Please welcome Katie Wallack. Her talk is The Gift in the Margins.
Hey, thanks. Oops, sorry. Ooh, now I'm nervous. Usually when you audition, there's silence and then you walk out and never hear anything, so the pressure's on. Yeah, a couple of, I don't know if you mentioned the housekeeping, like where the bathrooms are for the people who haven't been here before. There's a bathroom over there, there's another bathroom over there. Get up, leave, do what you need to do, take care of yourself. I'm gonna leave some time at the end for us to chat as a group and share questions and insights as an open forum. So, like Lance said, in my 9-to-5 life, I work with attorneys all day, so I'm feeling that impact right now, and I feel like I have to say that I'm not a professional historian. I am not a therapist. I'm not a professional motivational speaker. I'm barely an expert on myself. I am here just as a big fan of Ernest Shackleton and a fellow human on this playground of life to share some thoughts. So, yeah. A comedian friend told me once that when somebody gives you your attention, it's a gift. So thank you. Anyone who knows me knows I'm a crier, so I'm gonna just dive in so we can get going. So, when I was 16, my mother gave me this book by Alfred Lansing. It's about the Antarctic explorer Ernest Shackleton, and it's the first of many, many, many books and documentaries and articles that I've consumed over the past 32 years. This story has nagged at me, haunted me, pulled at me, inspired me, and I'm not alone in this fixation. There's a lot of people who have this almost indescribable and insatiable drive for more information and details about this one particular failed expedition that made Shackleton famous. And so I want to give a quick overview of what this expedition actually entailed. The formal name is the Imperial Trans-Antarctic Expedition, but most people know it as the Endurance Expedition because that's the name of his ship. So, this famous failed expedition, the goal of Ernest Shackleton in this expedition in particular was to be the first to cross Antarctica. In 1914, he set sail on that expedition from Argentina with a crew of 27. Little side note there, he thought it was 26. There was actually a stowaway. And he was discovered 3 days out. So,
Mrs. Chippy.
well, no, Mrs. Chippy is the cat
Right.
that they thought was a girl cat, which is Mrs. Chippy. It ended up being a boy cat. And that stowaway and that cat were like best friends. So I have a feeling that Mrs. Chippy maybe found and ratted him out. But anyway, he became part of the crew, and they went to the island of South Georgia, which is the last manned island. The last manned island, the last manned island before Antarctica. It's a whaling station. And all the whalers there, a collective of like 50 to 75 years of polar wisdom, said, this is a real bad year to try to go. The pack ice is more than we've ever seen it in our lifetime, so we really encourage you to wait. Shackleton waited a month, but eventually decided to continue on, and he never made it. Never made it to Antarctica. His ship got stuck in the ice. The pack ice was too much, and one crew member described it as being like an almond stuck in a chocolate bar. So they lived on the boat. And they lived on that boat together until it eventually crushed, at which time they lived on the ice, slowly taking supplies from the ship until it sank, and then months after that, waiting for the ice to melt where they could get into lifeboats, 3 little lifeboats, and sailed to the first island they could reach. It took them 8 days. They changed course 4 times to 4 different islands. And they finally did end up landing on Elephant Island. Unfortunately, this island was super inhospitable, and it wasn't on any shipping routes, so they weren't going to be discovered, and Shackleton made the really tough decision to split up the party. He took the best boat, the best supplies, and 6 men, and went on an 800-mile open boat journey back to South Georgia, where they had set off from more than 2 years earlier. Yeah, I said 2 years they've been dealing with this. It took them 3 weeks, but they did land on South Georgia, but they landed on the wrong side. And this island had never been surveyed. So 3 men were invalided from the 3-week open boat journey. So Shackleton and the last 2, walked for 36 hours over mountains and glaciers that had never been crossed before until they reached the whaling station, where it's said that when Shackleton met the station manager, he didn't recognize him. And the station manager was like, what the hell do you want? Because they looked rough. And when Shackleton introduced himself, the station manager wept because he knew the perils of what they had just been through. So it took another 4 months and 4 attempts with 4 different ships to reach the men back on Elephant Island, who had now been living there for 5 months, all under one rescue boat, 21 men. And I think about that sometimes because when Shackleton and the other 5 men left, they didn't know if they made it. So how long do you wait with not the best boat, not the carpenter's not there, the navigator's not there, all those best things. So a lot of faith and maybe some quelled panic. But they were eventually rescued. And among one of the truly remarkable things about this story is not only did all the men survive, but the fact that photographs and even video footage survived alongside the men. So every single one of the men survived because of Shackleton and his leadership and his approach to crisis. Pardon me. An Antarctic explorer, Raymond Priestley, is famously quoted as saying, "For scientific discovery, give me Robert Scott. For speed and efficiency of travel, give me the explorer Roald Amundsen. But when disaster strikes and all hope is gone, get down on your knees and pray for Ernest Shackleton." So this failure, this famous failure, but is actually where the source of admiration has come from. And he's admired because of the skill sets that failure highlighted, that were always there, but galvanized in this story. He hired an outstanding crew. He promoted a spirit of camaraderie. He knew how to get the best from each individual. He led effectively in a crisis. He formed teams for tough assignments and overcame obstacles to reach a goal. And Shackleton's actually taught in numerous business schools, in MBA programs, and there's a leadership training program based on this one particular failed expedition, the Endurance expedition. But again, he was famous for failing, which made me think, what are the failures in my life that may have revealed some strengths or gifts that wouldn't have been recognized if not for that failure? So I just want to offer a moment of shared silence to reflect on that, and maybe what are some perceived failures that you feel are failures, maybe other people have said that they're failures, and could we think about what gifts might have come from that experience? So I'm going to be quiet now for a minute. Maybe something came to mind, maybe something didn't. But it'll get the ball rolling. So if we rebrand Shackleton as a successful failure, and the admiration that came from it, I want to offer these observations from Frank Wild, who was his second in command on the Endurance expedition, but also his most faithful right-hand man. Compared to other polar explorers that he served with and met, he said Shackleton had the best points of leadership in that he was cool in the face of danger, resourceful under difficulties, quickness in decisions, a never-failing optimism that he instilled in others, which I think is personally undervalued. A genius for organization, consideration for those under him, and obliteration of self, which I interpret as servant leadership. But wide-scale admiration for Shackleton came posthumously. And one major reason for that is because World War I was still raging on, and it was astonishing to the men at the time that was still happening, because they had volunteered before they left Buenos Aires their services and their ship to contribute to the war. And from what I understand, Churchill, he sent a one-word telegram that said proceed. So depending on the day, they're like, we're fine, we don't need you. But either way, over 2 years later, this war is still raging. And many who came home from this trip actually enlisted to serve their country, including Shackleton. So the accomplishments made in this amazing survival story were overshadowed because at the time, the world was more interested in honoring dead heroes. Ultimately, Shackleton didn't achieve the mission of the expedition, so what was there to celebrate? Only just all the men surviving, but I guess that's not really that big a deal compared to the war that was raging on. And compared to the war, the risks and survival incurred was deemed frivolous. It was an unnecessary passion project that they all signed up for, so they knew the risks, they came back, now what? So almost no credit was given to the fact that the crew survived when many other expeditions who weren't marooned that long befell similar fates and died. Not just because of the ice, but the men went mad in the darkness. And you all know what it's like up here in the winter in Alaska. Like those days that it's like the heavy overcast, it's like slow arsenic poisoning of the soul. Well, at least there's still some light there. It's idle men in complete darkness for months. And what's amazing is that Shackleton prepared for that. And the crew recorded in their diaries, some of them, that they were having the time of their lives living on the boat. They had no idea the risks, the mental risks that were coming, because he had prepared for that. And that kind of context of how amazing Shackleton was in his leadership and preparation takes time and attention to explain, and there just wasn't an audience for that during World War I. And what's super heartbreaking for me is that in less than 10 years from returning from that expedition, Shackleton died. And while no one can say for sure what's going on in someone's internal life, all research seems to indicate he was still chasing that thing to make his mark on the world. So this made me think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Abraham Maslow was an American psychologist who in the 50s and 60s after World War II turned from the popular study of mental disorders, when everyone's like, what's going on with this person, to, well, what are the qualities of people who are happy? What are the qualities of people who are fulfilled in their lives? And that's where this hierarchy of needs came from. And from this hierarchy standpoint, recognized achievement and self-esteem is considered extremely important. In fact, there's an extended version of this graph that includes cognitive and aesthetic needs in between self-esteem and self-actualization. So at its most base, everything from self-esteem and below are classified as deficiency needs. Everything above is growth needs. So, and the growth needs can be considered by some a luxury. And really what I mean by that is if you are food insecure with unstable housing and a job that doesn't cover your expenses, seeking the inner potential of your life might not be a priority at that time. So understanding that, and that self-esteem is part of that base living, makes it particularly validating that he wasn't recognized at that time. So bringing this back to Shackleton, he resurfaced in the public eye in 1958 because it took 36 years for somebody to finally achieve what he had set out to do. And 1 year later is when Alfred Lansing's book came out, reframing Shackleton as a leader versus a failure opposite another polar explorer, Robert Scott. So Robert Scott, who died a hero for pressing on to achieve his expedition's goals, whereas Shackleton lived by knowing when to retreat. And I think it's like amazing for us, it's certainly amazing for me that despite Shackleton not living to see all this, that we get the gift of the story reframed. And someone took the time to reframe that failure for him. And I don't know about you, but I'm not banking on someone writing a book rebranding my failures as successes 40 years after I die. And really, what good would that do me? I'm dead. So since that's not an option, and that we know from Maslow's hierarchy of needs that self-esteem is so very base important, the takeaway is that we can't build on successes that we haven't acknowledged. So without discounting how vital it is to have your peers and community and friends and loved ones outside yourself acknowledge your gifts, it starts here with acknowledging yourself. So what successes can we acknowledge for ourselves and build from? And I want to take a moment to think about that. And for all my beloved introverted friends, we're going to have a little interactive exercise now. I want you to take a moment to think about what successes you haven't acknowledged, especially maybe the ones that other people have said, and you're like, no, it's fine. Anyone would have done it in the same place. It's not that big a deal. Or it wasn't exactly right, thank you, but no. Take a moment to think about what that is, and I would love for you to turn to somebody here and share that. So share what that is, a success that hasn't been recognized, and then receive that from someone else. So hang on to all these excruciating feelings, because I want to hear about it at the end, the cool and the cringe. And I'm going to give you a moment to go do that. Yeah. Okay, here we go.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, no, I mean, but it's subjective, you know what I mean? I have a lot of friends that are like, oh, I was like, it was a personal thing. I was just like, I was like traveling
led me to my retirement. And it's hard for us. Well, darn.
Yeah. But like I say, it's just funny how like they don't see it right away. They're like, oh wow.
When I do something, they're like, all right. You have to be so enjoying. Yeah. Definitely not like done everything. Like that, and I do find it
About one more minute. One more minute.
Well, here's one. I don't know, 16, 17 years ago when you broke up with me. And that led to
Is there anyone who needs somebody to share with, or anyone? No. All right. Thank you all. Did everybody feel complete here? Everybody got that? I want to thank you for joining me in that, and I appreciate that. And while we have a friendly group to try this out with, I do recognize that this is very hard, and it can be especially hard out in the world with family or community and workplace where you don't feel seen or heard or recognized, or just plain don't fit in. So my hope was that by leaning into it a little bit, you could feel what it's like in your body to experience that a little bit and inch towards bringing that into other areas of your life. So fitting into a community is so important because we don't want to diminish ourselves in the process of acknowledging our successes. And if you're part of communities that don't see it, you have to start here. So going back to Shackleton, some of the challenges of not recognizing his own gifts was that he didn't fit in. Or he didn't feel like he fit in, despite being extremely popular in various communities. And he had 8 adoring sisters. He loved his parents, a brother, his family and wife that encouraged his adventures, and his wife that supported him emotionally, financially, children and colleagues that were wholly devoted to him. And simply put, he didn't fit in. And some areas that support that narrative is that he wasn't great academically. And it's not because he wasn't intelligent, he just wasn't interested in what they were teaching. Sound familiar? He was a voracious reader and loved poetry, but academically, he was at the bottom end. He was rejected for Royal Navy service, despite having ascended great ranks in the Merchant Navy. He tried pivoting his career and became a journalist, and eventually quit that due to dissatisfaction in the field. He worked for the Scottish Royal Geographic Society, but he was never supported by the English Royal Geographic Society, though posthumously they loved to claim him as his boy. He was Irish. I think that was part of why they didn't wholly embrace him. He was tolerated versus wholly rejected, but eventually with the Scottish Royal Geographic Society and supporting others, he outgrew the position. Entrepreneurs recognized his talents, and these talents that are currently studied in business schools and appeal to today's entrepreneurs, but his businesses failed. And I think maybe perhaps that's because he failed at those business ventures because he was a master at the framework and methodology of entrepreneurship and business, which is why the entrepreneurs were drawn to him, but he wasn't necessarily meant to succeed as a business owner. So he was the expert leader they needed, not him running a business himself. And he unsuccessfully ran for a political position. So with this list, can anyone in the audience relate to some of these fits and starts in your life? I know I can. And someone gave me this magnet, I don't know when, but for me it's the new take on the classic ugly duckling fable. And I wasn't going to read it, but just to make sure everybody can see it. It says, before you diagnose yourself with depression or low self-esteem, first make sure you're not just surrounded by assholes. Some people in jobs are just not going to get you. And that doesn't mean you're the problem. Well, for Shackleton, he didn't culturally fit in, Irish among the English. Merchant Navy versus Royal Military Navy. Shackleton came from a lineage of Quaker values, Quaker families, with egalitarian values that contrast the hierarchical leadership of military. He also had a progressive mother, 8 sisters, in a home that valued gender equality and emotional intelligence. And if you are emotionally intelligent, it can be excruciating to be around people who aren't. So, at the end of the day, it was his responsibility, just like our own, to acknowledge our gifts and talents. Let's not discount the value of knowing where you don't fit in and what you're not good at. That can be just as valuable as knowing where you do. Pretty much every time I go to a restaurant, I tell the server, Gaby's laughing because I do this all the time, is that I tell the server I was a server for one shift. Not at that restaurant, just one shift in my lifetime, because hungry, angry people and having to live off of tips, my financial security is based on somebody liking me, is not something that I'm interested in signing up for. I didn't do well at it, I don't like it. I'm totally fine embracing the fact that I'm a failed server. I have no problem saying that. I'm saying it publicly here. That's pretty easy. But something that's a little bit harder for me is that I'm a failed actress. And this is harder for me because it was something I really cared about. I really invested my time, my money, my heart, and my identity into that career. And like Shackleton, there were many aspects of the entertainment business that I just didn't fit into for the long run, and what was a drive became a grind. And I'm very much at peace with the decision that I've made in my life right now to pause that. But vulnerability and sadness, grief, I don't know, all that comes up in this statement from time to time, especially when people say it. So, for my own peace of mind, I had to do the work of reframing that failure identity for myself. And while we talked earlier about reframing failures as a thing and discovering the gifts from there, reframing the identity of something failed is the next level, I think. It's much harder. But if we could rebrand the mislabeled, failed, what have you, could we discover our next beloved identity, waiting in the margins, and bring that to the center of our everyday? And could that unlock the next great adventure in our life? I have my job today. I work for the Screen Actors Guild. I turn lawyer speak into human speak. And I got that job because of my work as a performer. I support my family, which is amazing. I support my family remotely from Alaska, and I'm here presenting. I learned PowerPoint from that job. And so the sum of all of that is still being collected. Each moment, I'm like gathering more experiences to present a new whole. So I'd like to take another minute of shared silence. Don't worry, it's not interactive. To let you chew on this, like, could you relabel something in your life, a former identity, something that maybe you've paused for a minute, and reframe it into something that might unlock the next adventure in your life? Changing the failed into what? The Ernest Shackleton story has been in the margins of my life for a very long time. And a beloved new identity I'm leaning into as a writer. And last summer, I wrote 3 episodes of a TV show about Shackleton, and last summer I had an informal reading of the pilot in Los Angeles. And it was super scary and exciting, kind of like today. And among the feedback was 3 reoccurring questions. Why you? Why now? Why this story? And even now, these questions make me nauseous, because it's like I took this brave thing, like, all right, let me take this thing that I'm dragging on instinct out here. It's been with me for a while. What can I do? And now I have to articulate it for people. I wanted to die because I didn't know what to say. But it worked on me. And it's still hard, but the story won't leave me alone. So I've taken, from last summer to now, in between working, raising my little boy, hanging out with my husband and friends, and doing life, those three questions tapping on my shoulder, I would talk to people. I would talk to my friends, basically hold everybody socially hostage, talking about Shackleton all the time. And these conversations with the people helped me to distill that one of the things that I admire so much about Shackleton as a leader was his emotional intelligence. And so I looked up that term because it wasn't coined until the 90s. What he was described at the time, they didn't have the words, was he was a Viking with a mother's heart. A balance of feminine and masculine attributes, and he described himself as having something of a woman inside me. I could do a whole other talk about women and feminine and emotionality and all of that, but I don't want to get detracted here. His something of a woman inside him was that emotional intelligence, and it was palpable to people. It was a unique and uncommon character trait that was greatly admired, and I wanted to know where that came from. So in my quest to answer these simple questions, I began to focus heavily on the nurture part of nature versus nurture, because it feels to me like a lot of the books and these business programs and articles, Harvard Business Journal, that are lifting him up are talking about the leadership qualities and why it's important to utilize these strategies in environments by adults for adults. And I wanted to know how to do that at home and how I could do that in my personal life, especially having a little boy. So it's also well known that Shackleton his family was extremely important to him. So that led me to realize, these qualities came about as a result of, not a reaction against his childhood. So I started looking into his childhood and what his childhood was like, what are the environments and the people that influenced him, and apply them, if I could, to my life. So these are the things that I found out, is that his mother, a mother of 10, and let's just be clear, just because she has 10 children doesn't mean that she wasn't pregnant more times than that. So that's a lot. And she was very progressive in her thinking, in her literature, in encouraging her daughters, all her children, to go out there and make their mark. His father was gentle by nature and was a farmer that, because of the famine going on in Ireland, pivoted his career at 33 and went to medical school to support his family of 10. He went and became a doctor, and he loved being outside. He loved nature. And after becoming a doctor and setting up his practice, he leaned into homeopathy and brought his life back to the garden and had, the prize-winning rose garden for 40 years. He had 8 sisters, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And some of them did incredible things on their own merit. They would be popular. If Shackleton wasn't as famous as he was, they would be super famous. One of them was a war correspondent journalist that was on the front lines taking pictures and reporting World War I. Another sister was a nurse out there. Another one was an actress, a poet. He had a brother that was I think pretty troubled, actually. All I could find from him is that he was the #1 suspect of the theft of the Irish crown jewels, and that they never investigated because it would have exposed a homosexual ring within the Irish aristocracy, which leads me to think about a lot of different pressures that he may have felt with his famous brother. I mentioned earlier Quaker. He had a Quaker value system. He was Irish, poetry was huge in their home. They would quote poetry and have each other guess who was the poet. He went on these shipyard adventures. When he was like 9 or 10, he and his little buddies would go for like a day or two. They wouldn't come home for a day or two. I can't imagine at 9 or 10, just, okay, see ya, just trying to get as far as he could get from home to see the ships, and then on his way back. And I don't know if it was encouraged, but he wasn't punished for it, let's just say that. And he grew up in a home of gender equality. And I just want to take a quick second with Quaker, because I didn't really know anything about Quaker religion, and so I've been looking into that. And what I've learned, again, I'm not an expert, is that the fundamental beliefs around Quakers is this conviction that there is that of God in every person, and negating the need for priests or rituals to access the divine. There's something for that for me with his servant leadership, and again, why he didn't really fit in the Navy and some of these more hierarchical systems, because everyone is equal. Everyone's opinions and ideas are valuable, and that's how he led. Their faith emphasizes a direct inward spiritual experience with a deep commitment to peace, equality, and social justice in every day. So it was that every day that got me. These are the consistent influences in his everyday life, so much so, and his wife and his children, but so much so that the family motto, "By endurance we conquer," he named his boat the Endurance. And the Endurance expedition is what's enduring. We could go on with the metaphors. But everyday life, it got me thinking, there's a lot of everyday life in between these successes and failures. Not only for him, but certainly for me, probably for us. Everyday life, you're quietly building something or you're eroding. You're building something great or maybe not so great. You're eroding bad or old belief systems that don't serve you anymore, or relationships and opportunities that maybe you're not capitalizing on. And it can be really challenging to remember to value just the everyday in this social media filtered, edited world that we live in, where we're so absent from process. There's the product. So that everyday life and the simple joys that were the intangible magic that he had as a leader is actually what galvanized the crew, and in my mind, allowed Shackleton to lead his men home. He would regularly, these are photos from the expedition. Frank Hurley took these photos. They were on glass plates and survived. They are sitting around a stove. Shackleton regularly would come up and chat with men on their night watch, just getting to know them, hanging out. They're cleaning the floors. This here is a doctor, there's a scientist, and a sailor. It sounds like the beginning of a joke as I said that. But this is everyday life. The floors need to be cleaned. You guys are going to do it. There was no hierarchy. We're here together, living together. They played. This is football, soccer out on the ice. They worked alongside each other, reading, parallel play, that type of like scientists learning what the sailors do. The sailors learning how to take measurements and help with the experiments. They had 69 sled dogs that weren't trained at all. This is the shortest crew member with the largest dog here. And a few of them were tasked with training the dogs, and they had dog sled races. Shackleton brought costumes. He prepared for this downtime in case being stuck was an eventuality. And ironically, there was this story about him and his sisters. Like one of his sisters had some kind of sealskin muff that he was always like, I just feel so nice. He just was always taking it. So I think about that to here. In the middle of winter, they just decided to shave their heads. So all of them shave their heads together, including Shackleton, who's there in the back. These funny little things that are every day. In their bunks, when they were going to be living on the boat, he moved everyone to the warmest part of the boat and said you could bunk with whoever you want, decorate it as you wish. The painter, the crew member who was a painter, actually painted a hearth with a fireplace on the wall, and they gave each of their bunks names. They named the main room the Ritz, and they had slideshows every Saturday night. And here they are playing cards together. This is the photographer, Frank Hurley, up on the mast, and someone taking a picture of him taking a picture, since he's recording everything that everyone else is doing. And it just occurred to me that all this everydayness, supporting each other's passions, and the basic needs of living, is really what helped them when they moved from the boat to the ice, to this like, well, it's a little uncomfortable situation here. How are we going to pivot? We already know how to work together. When they had to pull the boats over the ice, and eventually that didn't work. When they paused and then were living on the ice, playing cards and going to each other's tents in between gale storms, sharing the limited clothing, supplies, food, bringing a sense of normalcy to a backdrop of something that's anything but normal and anything but safe. With each other, they felt safe. This is a famous photo that they always put out as if it was the rescue. But this is actually when the boat was leaving. And it's just a remarkable moment of faith. So the irony for me with this regular life impact that Shackleton brought so much joy acknowledging people's birthdays and any excuse for celebration, he gave that to others, and he got that from home. His heart was restless, and he was still feeling that unfulfilled greatness. And for me, as somebody who's such a fan of him, is just, I stick with the what ifs. Like, what if he could have settled into the peace and love of everyday life with the friends and family and crew that deeply admired and loved him? What if he used that time for rejuvenation and to marinate on these failures, rebrand the failures, built on unacknowledged successes with all the people who loved and admired him for his extraordinary gifts? Could that have, instead of like him going and having a heart attack at 47 on an unfocused expedition, where could his life could have led to? It's a blind spot. And in some ways, I think this whole talk is about blind spot. And a blind spot is defined as information known to others and not oneself. And we all have it. I mean, you can't ever know it all. So I'm just not convinced that he knew in his lifetime what a powerful, inspirational man that he was. And for me personally, I don't want to suffer the same fate of living without that sense of peace about the course of my life. So keep going with the sum of the whole with each new experience and person and chapter. So getting back to these annoying questions, as long as I'm talking about myself, besides being fixated on this topic for 30 years, I finally stumbled on why me. My husband and I spent 5 years trying to get pregnant with IVF. And when I did, this was the only pregnancy I was ever going to have, and it was in COVID, in Texas, in quarantine. And my only craving outside of Shake Shack hot dogs was Ernest Shackleton, which was so weird. I reread the books, the documentaries after work. I'm sitting there eating the hot dog, like watching all this stuff. This is me about 4,000 weeks pregnant. I'd say arguably the most divine feminine. I mean, It's feminine. Like, why am I obsessed with these old dead white guys at the end of the earth from 100 years ago while I'm growing this little baby? But what I know now is that because I want to raise my little boy with the same values of this servant leadership and commitment to peace and uplifting marginalized voices from a place of privilege that a white American man has in the US. So it's getting kind of hot up here. To sum up, this is pretty much it, folks. Nothing's linear, nothing's predictable. But maybe something from everyday life, a success of any kind that you can acknowledge for yourself or others. It might inspire a dream adventure. And that dream adventure may run its course. And it's not a failure, even if it feels that way. So keep going, because life has many chapters. It's all those chapters, the sum of its parts continue to evolve as we keep going and we keep trying. And there's some really great children's books right now. I know them because I have to read them on repeat at my house with my 4-year-old. And this one's a great one. It's called Maybe by Kobe Yamada. And I just want to leave a little quote with you that it's on the journey discoveries made. And a little quote from Katie Wallack Dickinson. Don't forget to look for your gifts in the margins. Thank you so much. This has been an honor.
Consider naming your son Shackleton? That'd be a cool name.
Oh, you know what? I didn't. I named him Wilder. So I wanted something a little, since he was a science baby, something a little more free. But maybe we'll work that into a nickname. Yes?
How are you going to be able to adopt 6 Quaker daughters for yourself?
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
The most magnanimous Western religious group on earth.
I'm very new to learning about it, and I want to know more. So, yeah. I'll get back to you on the adoption. Yeah. Yes.
So it occurs to me that Shackleton is embracing something more than just collaboration.
Yeah.
So collaboration for me and consensus tends to be the lowest common denominator, where everybody agrees on the same thing.
Right.
And it's less than the whole.
Right.
But super collaboration, which is what he was doing, was elevating this idea to connect people together in a way that they didn't understand how to do it.
Yeah.
And he did it in a way that elevated the culture of what they were doing.
Yeah.
And really embraced the moment to make something different and scale jumped out of misery into collective culture.
Yeah.
So that's my thoughts.
That was great. Thank you for that. I think part of that too is that he did that before there was a crisis.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
Because sometimes it can be too late.
I mean, part of what many of us do here is, part of what I do is I look for unintended consequences all the time, right? So how do you avoid the unintended consequences of what's going to come? And how do you get prepared for it? Like, that should be your job. Right?
Yeah.
And he knew that because he knew what was going to happen, because he lensed it. He lensed it through, drew it back, and saw what was going to happen and the potentials.
Yeah.
So that's key.
Yeah.
And your talk was great.
Thank you.
I appreciate you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, Gil.
I'm not sure does he really know what he's doing? Do you feel that? I mean, does he look at that and say, I was interested in what he said about unintended consequences. It's really hard to see those things.
Yeah.
I mean, how aware of himself was he, do you think? Or just came by it because of the way, I mean, naturally.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to understand how I could be that way, you know?
Right.
Because I'm not.
Right.
but I'm surprised at that.
I have this. I wish I had it with me. It's a circle, and it has a teeny tiny sliver that says, "What I know, I know." A slightly bigger sliver that's a slightly bigger sliver that says, "What I know, I don't know." And then all this, what I don't know, I don't know. And for me personally, I think, and with Shackleton leadership, the best you can aim for is, at the very least, know what you don't know. The whaler's saying, like, I don't think it's going to be great. The pack ice is coming. Like, it's way early. So he now knows what he doesn't know. And so I think because of all those different expeditions that he'd been on, and he talked with people too, even though there's this rivalry between him and Robert Scott, they were still colleagues and shared experiences that,
Having the foresight is what is
yeah,
to me, because usually I figure out what the unintended consequences are when it's too late.
yeah, and that's where preparation is. And you can't prepare for everything either. And you may never start if you try to prepare for every eventuality. I talk quite a bit with the labor and economics statistician at my work, and the demand for all the data of all the different possible scenarios is impossible. But there's guides. And if you can trust yourself plus your preparation, and that you'll know what to do when the next unknown thing is. This is all improv, everything. Life is improv. Yeah. Yeah.
I have a question about you.
Yeah.
What criteria do you use to say you're a failed actress?
What criteria do I use? When it's been said about me is not being super famous, not having consistent legacy of work. I'm not doing it now. This happens to a lot of women, like, oh, they decided to get married and have a baby, so they're not doing it anymore.
If there was a criteria that would put you in the top 1/10 of 1% of actresses, or even less, would you be interested in knowing what it was?
I don't think so.
Good answer.
I want to open this up. I'm so grateful for your attention and your time today, and the Adams Center for the opportunity to talk today. And did anyone want to complain about anything? You know, the interactive, were there things you want to see or hear more of? Or, you know, I'm continuing on with this, and I welcome your thoughts. Yeah.
I love the way you engaged the microphone when it was introduced to you.
Oh, thank you.
It was so much easier to hear.
Oh, thank you. I'll work more on that. Yes.
I came in late. I'm just curious though, because it seems to me like Shackleton is the product of a way of living, which is not so popular. Did you spend time to like understand more about not just, you know, his family, but like things that he believed in, like, sorry, I'm not able to articulate what I'm trying to say here, but obviously his beliefs, you know, the culture at home, what shaped him as a person.
Yeah.
I see that, you know, going with the ship with our, you know, consumerists and I really like what you said about ignoring the process and our product culture. Like, that seems to me like that would be interesting if in your whatever you're doing with your show, like, you know, exploring his cultural upbringing. Was that something that you paid attention to, or are you just interested in Shackleton and the things that he did?
I'm not just interested in Shackleton. It's still uncovering it for me. I really have no idea why this is, even with all my conclusions today, where this is going to lead me, I don't know. But I feel like I have to follow it through. And every time I get an opportunity to talk about it and hear how it lands with people, I want to bring that in. Yeah.
Two things. First is the aspect of Shackleton beyond the nurturing and the preparation, but he maintained his command authority. I mean, he was the leader, and I don't know if you could comment a little bit about that. And also in terms of the idea of, I think Shackleton might give himself credit for mitigating the failure of the expedition by bringing his men home. But the fact that he was still driven to get another expedition, finance another expedition, go on another expedition, get to Antarctica. So I think there's probably he maintained a certain sense of failure that he didn't do that continued to drive him to get back to Antarctica.
Yeah. So I'll say this about his leadership. I don't feel that he commanded anything. I think his leadership was inspired. The men trusted him wholeheartedly. He didn't need to command in a way that I think of keeping people in line. They trusted him partly because he saw them as individuals and they wanted to get on board with his vision. He saw what they could contribute to what he was going for. And I mean, visionaries and people in the flow of their mastery, that's super sexy. People want to be a part of that. And for somebody who is doing that and wanting to do that and sees that light in you, that you have this gift that could really help us. Come with us. That is more an inspired, and frankly, I think that is more enduring trust than commanding and being told what to do. That's my opinion and how his leadership was maintained, even if they disagreed. In terms of like, he did go to Antarctica. Well, he went on an expedition. He died before he landed again. And I'm glad you brought this up because I want to be clear that this rest and rejuvenation in the everyday life doesn't mean that's enough. You don't have to do anything else, especially if you feel like there's more to do. But there's a difference in inspired action versus like, there's something I gotta do, so I'm just gonna try to go do this thing, which is what the Quest expedition, that was his last expedition, feels like to me. That's the sort of interpretation from historians and whatnot, because there wasn't a meaningful goal laid out. Most of the crew was from the endurance expedition because they trusted him. They had already built that relationship. They came even though he never paid them from the last one. So that's what I would say about that. And the rejuvenation and the everyday life isn't to diminish ambition at all. And it doesn't mean to quell that you don't have to go do something. But having it inspired action and then using all the gifts that he's studied for now, preparation, hiring an outstanding crew, understanding what the goal is, and preparing for that unknown. Yeah. Thanks for the question, Dad. Yeah. Okay.
So I think what Shackleton did was pretty brilliant. He leaned into agency and authorship, and he stepped away from leadership to be a mentor. And that's the power of his gift.
Yeah.
Is that he empowered through agency his crew.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Which, if you're a good leader, you do that all the time.
Yeah.
And so I'll just acknowledge that that's part of what I'm interested in comparison to what we do every day. Right?
Yeah.
How do we create agency? How do we create authorship? How do we create connection to create a culture that can change?
Yeah.
That's it. Thank you.
I love it. Thank you. Thank you for that. You actually just helped bring something together for me, which was these little 2 to 3 day excursions he did with his pals when he was little. His parents gave him agents. Okay. Let's see what you can do. Make your mistakes and learn from them. But he had some place to come back to that he trusted and felt safe and could learn from. And I think that's what he did. Yeah, his family. Yeah, yeah. So he did the same for that. Thank you for that. Are you okay? So I just want to say one more thing in terms of because I didn't get a chance to work it in here on the theme of gifts in the margins and acknowledging marginalized communities and people. 2 things. I recently learned that Maslow's hierarchy of needs was, there's an article about the appropriation of that from an indigenous community that actually had this philosophy for many, many years before that. So I wanted to acknowledge that. This life squiggle drawing that I did was from a card I bought 25 years ago, and I cannot find the artist to credit that. And I also just wanted to say that what has been so awesome for me is I came to this next level that makes it unique, the Shackleton story, and identifying the women after I became a mom. And my mom gave me the book. So thanks, Mom. Okay, thank you. It's hot.